The following podcast is brought to you on behalf of the Saracens Supporters Association and is not an official product of Saracens Limited. Content provided voluntarily by our guests and contributors are of their own opinion, which may change over time and should not be taken as fact, particularly as the podcast hosts are regularly talking drivel anyway. If you've got some drivel of your own you'd like to share, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at fezcast_SSA. You can search Facebook for the Fezcast, or you can email fezcast.ssa@outlook.com.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of season 3 of the Fezcast with me, Jez Denton, Matt Bartlett, and we're joined by one of our new guest presenters of this show. Hi, Barry. Good evening to you, gentlemen.
Good evening. Hope we're all keeping as well as can be with the present situation.
I suppose that's where we need to start off with, and just pass on from the Fezcast our condolences and our thoughts at this time on the occasion of Queen Elizabeth II passing. And I don't know whether she was a rugby fan, but I mean, our condolences from the Fezcast to the royal family on this occasion. But I think the other thing to say is, we've seen rugby go ahead this weekend. I completely understand why Thursday night's game against Northampton Saints was cancelled, although West Ham played and Arsenal played in the football Thursday night, and then football has cancelled this weekend, but rugby's gone ahead. But I think it was the right decision. Don't you agree, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think there's probably no right and wrongs about it. I believe the last time it happened, actually, it was the reverse. Football went ahead and rugby was cancelled, which was quite strange, but it's up to each individual governing body, I suppose, to do what they think is correct in the situation. I suspect that sporting events going ahead is not really, certainly not. I don't see how it could be seen as disrespectful. If people want to go and go watch sports, then they should be allowed to. And if they feel that it's not the thing for them in a period of national mourning, then they're more than welcome to not go. So it's strange. I don't think that you can't put the world on hold for every time something like this happens, and life does go on. Absolutely.
It reminds me, actually, and this is a rugby thing. I used to run our rugby club sevens tournament at Abingdon Rugby Club, and 1997, our rugby tournament was on. And I turned up to the clubhouse and the phone was going, and it was the Daily Mail telling me that we were going to cancel our sevens tournament that day because Princess Diana had just died. And I had a massive argument with them about it and saying, the money that we were going to lose, et cetera, and they basically said, no, we'll put you in the paper if you don't. So we cancelled that one. There you go. But no, I just thought the tributes that have been played, I watched the Exeter Chiefs Tigers game yesterday, watched Gloucester against Wasps this afternoon. The tributes played there, the singing of the national anthem, the minute silence, perfectly observed. And a great tribute to our monarch, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for people to come together, isn't it? I mean, you've seen in all sorts of reasons why certain things could have been cancelled, and actually sport is one of those things that can bring people together and be a good feel for that. And I can understand why certainly some football games were cancelled. I mean, obviously there was an awful lot going on over the weekend that needed a lot of policing. A lot of occasions. So certainly in London, you can see why they just had to cancel football matches because of just the sheer volume of police officers, etc., that would have been needed. So I totally get that. And equally, I get why rugby's carried on as it is. And I agree with Barry. I think the best thing to do was just giving people the choice, which putting the games on. If you didn't feel it was right to go, then you don't have to go. If you're happy going, being respectful about it, then go for it. So I think what's happened is quite right. Obviously condolences from us as well, but we crack on.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We'll touch on it in a little while. But before we do that, I wanted now to talk about last week's show with Lucy Ray. Matt, you've got the figures. We had a pretty good listenership so far, haven't we?
We have, yeah. It's very quickly getting close to being our most listened to show, even though at this point it's barely been out for a week. So, who would have thought that a show with the Saracens CEO on a Saracens bus would get so many listeners, eh? But number 2 podcast in Brazil for rugby now. So, we're flying up the charts. We had Portugal last week, it's Brazil this week. I don't know where we're going to be next week, but looking forward to it.
It must be our accent or something translates well into Portuguese, So, Scorcho, Butruscali. Barry, I mean, we'll ask you. I mean, me and myself and Matt, I was involved in the interview with Sam, and I really enjoyed doing the interview. I think it came over really well. But Barry, from your point of view, you obviously listened to it. What did you think?
It was very informative. I think it was exceptionally timely in respect to one question that Lucy answered, where she indicated that she's quite comfortable with the finances of the club because it followed hot on the heels of a Mail on Sunday article showing how much rugby is in debt. And obviously we are one of those clubs listed in here I'm just looking at the article now, actually, that they put our debt at 40.8 million. Which is only just behind Bristol and fortunately way behind Wasps. But yeah, it was reassuring to know that Lucy's quite comfortable with the finances and the way things are structured around there. And I think that under her stewardship, I suspect the club is in good hands.
Right, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and she was very honest about it. I don't think there is any point hiding, but also what I thought that came out from the back of that was the fact that they do appreciate that things cost, and certainly elements of the rugby family, shall we say, perhaps need to learn that lesson that it isn't, as I said, the easiest way to make a millionaire is to get a billionaire to buy a sports club. And, I mean, I'm sure there are certain tax advantages for owning sports clubs or things like that. Rich people don't go into things with their eyes closed and don't go into it with any other. We're adult enough and intelligent enough to work out that they're not doing it purely from altruistic reasons. But yeah, again, as you say, Lucy was very open about it, and I think her passion for the club came through as well, which was great. I'm mentioning certainly someone who I think we should make a club cult hero at some point in the future, Peter Deacon, who, when I first joined the club before your time, Barry, but Peter was a huge figure at Saracens in the mid to late 90s, had come from rugby league and then went back to rugby league and worked at Sale Sharks as well, an absolute giant of the game that not many people will know about. So it's great that Lucy brought his name up as well, I felt.
Yeah, and obviously the stories about Bramley Road and Michael Liner, that was quite amusing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll move on from that one. As I say, I do want to hark back though to Thursday night, the game that was cancelled, because there is a little bit of a controversy around that. We saw when squads were announced, both from Saints and from Saracens, that there was a lot of noise about the relative standards, experience, players that were in the squad. I mean, Saracens picked a squad that pretty much was probably as good a squad as they would pick and would probably give us a very good idea of where we're going for our first league match against Quins. And Saints picks a bunch of kids in the spirit, as they say, of the Premiership Cup. Conveniently forgetting that a couple of years ago when Saints won it, they put out some words and all their their superstars are in it. So I mean, it's a little bit naughty of them to now complain that Saracens. But what the first thing is, we praise the powers that be for putting rugby on, and then we've got to give them some criticism for scheduling the game. Whether they scheduled it to help Saracens out to give them something to play for, to get them ready for their start of the season, bearing in mind we had a bye week or what, I don't know. But it just seems, at the point they announced it, it seemed a daft game to play, I felt.
Yeah, I'm not. No, I'm not sure the logic behind playing the Premiership rugby games in midweek, and I can only assume it's to try and sort of shoehorn it into the schedule around the various World Cups and other commitments and international games going on left, right, and centre. But it does seem a bit odd, and then to have. I mean, you had to feel sorry for Northampton. They effectively had 2 games in 2 days at one point, and that is just. I mean, we talk about the game talks about player welfare, and clearly no one's going to expect anyone to play in 2 games in consecutive days in terms of the same players. But it does seem daft that you schedule games like that that close together. It kind of defies logic, and I'm sure there was some negotiation between Saracens, Northampton, and Premiership Rugby, and that was probably why it was scheduled for there, because it would have helped us out in terms of it being a second warm-up game, if you like. But now, of course, with it being cancelled, and as we said, we completely understand why, we're now in a hole against coming up into our opening league game next week. We'll find ourselves at least 2 weeks behind our opponents.
What Barry's hit on there is probably the bit about it's exactly right, that everyone seems to be forgetting when they're getting annoyed either way, is that surely that wouldn't have been done without Saracens and Northampton saying, yep, absolutely fine. And neither side would have been, all right, no one releases the teams until a few days before, but no one on either Saracens or Northampton's side of things could have looked at that and thought that anything different would have happened, that Saracens would have picked a pre-season team of a strong team looking to get some minutes before the start of the season, and everyone would have expected Northampton to be picking everyone that wasn't involved in the 23 for the league game. And so I don't know why anyone thinks that anything different would have happened. But yeah, I agree, the scheduling of that, a little bit odd. But, I can see, from our point of view, we had to play it as a pre-season game, because who else would we have played if we didn't have that Premiership Cup game? We couldn't have played anyone on that weekend, or anyone that would have been a decent run out. You can't pick teams out of the Championship because they're already playing as well. You wouldn't have been able to pick anyone out of the Irish, Welsh, Scottish leagues and things because they've all got their own pre-season ready for next week. So, yeah, I don't really know what anyone was expecting to happen. But like you say, it's now pretty much a moot point, and the only thing that's left is to figure out where exactly in the schedule that game can go if it gets played at all now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. This season is going to be one that is all over the place, a bit like the football is as well. I mean, World Cup's come along and throw all sorts of spanners in all sorts of work. So there we go.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the StoneX.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to our second part of the Fezcast, episode 3, with myself, Jez, Matt and Barry. And as we said before we went to the break, a little bit of news to the Mavericks, a few new signings, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's good to take stock a bit before the season starts. We at the back end of last season, we obviously had a chat to the Quarter Time podcast, the girls from the netball podcast there, about Mavericks and the potential for them to sort of do exactly the same as Saracens did those years ago, 2008, 2009, roughly, whenever it was, that day when 14 or 15 players had their contracts not torn up, but were told that they were going to be no longer required at the end of the season. And there's a bit of upheaval, obviously, with staff at the Mavericks, with Tamsin Greenway coming in and Camilla Buchanan taking over. But it's It's not quite been the night of the long knives that we saw, but there's 7 of the squad from last season have been retained. So that's Ina Marie Venter, Brittany Clark, Sasha Corbin, Beth Koyadale, Aaliyah Zaranika, Raz Kwashi, and Jodie Gibson, which is kind of what we like to see at Saracens. Really, it's a good sort of strong core of experienced players and younger players making their way in the game, which is pretty encouraging. Obviously, with that, there were several players leaving as well, so all the best to them. But there's 5 new faces that have come in now. From what we've heard from the team, and certainly from Camilla Buchanan, is that they're very excited about the talent that they've brought in. Certainly different styles of players to what they've had before. So jigsawing everything together is going to be pretty interesting. So Lisa Mather is one that I know that they're very excited by. Who spent a lot of time in New Zealand, which is by far and away the best place to be playing netball. It's pretty much professional over there, so why not? But we're going to be able to speak to someone from the Mavericks very soon. We're talking to them at the moment, and we'll get someone who actually knows more than me to discuss their squad at some point.
Oh, excellent stuff, Matt. And as ever, you've done your homework. You brought us the information. That's brilliant. I mean, Barry, have you watched any of the netball over the last couple of years, or is it something that's new to you that perhaps you're going to get involved in a bit more this year?
Yeah, it's new to me. I don't think I've seen the game played since I was at school, to be quite honest with you. And even then, it was always a little bit of a mystery to me how it actually worked. But yeah, it's with the Mavericks now being on board with Saracens, it'll be interesting to see how that ties in and where we can potentially get involved with it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, we've enjoyed chatting to the guys from Mavericks, and so yeah, looking forward to when that all bears fruition, Matt. So and keep your eyes open on all the social media that we put out on Facebook, the Fezcast, or Twitter, SSA Fezcast, isn't it? And on Instagram, and you'll pick up what goes on there. Women, very much the same position as the men, as we discussed off there. They've got a bye week before their season starts, so they'll be going in a bit colder than everybody else. But any news that we need to know about them, Matt, or is it just very much wait and see at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting start to the season, I guess, for the women. There's obviously the World Cup just around the corner starting in October, which means that the league isn't starting until November once the World Cup is over. So they're playing the majority of the cup rounds, which is generally seen as a development cup as well, in the same way that the Premiership Cup allegedly is for the men. So, we'll be without certainly all of our England stars, of which there are many. But we've got plenty of players as well that could be playing for the USA, for Scotland, for Wales, for Canada as well. So we are losing quite a lot of players to that. The depth of the squad and some of those younger players coming through. But yeah, we've got exactly the same situation in that as we do in the men's league, in that everyone gets going before we do, and we've got a bye week first up. So this weekend we're not playing at all, and then the first round is on the 25th, I believe, where we're playing against Bristol, which is if it was a full strength match. First up, that would be very, very tasty, and I'm sure Bristol's development side are going to be pretty strong as well.
Well, as usually happens on the Fezcast, we finish recording the show, and then within about 24 hours, there's then some more news that we should be talking about. So we've got a little opportunity just to mention it here quickly. So the news from the Saracens women's side is that we've got 3 of our international players that have all signed a new deal over the last couple of days. So Alicia Corrigan, Georgia Evans and Katha Jacobs are all signed on. They're hopefully preparing for the World Cup. We really hope that they all get announced in their respective squads. And we've also got Chantel Mile, who's signed a new deal as well. Now, she's been out with an injury for quite a long time, but we're hoping to see her back in the new year. So 4 very good players there that we've seen reinstated in the Saracens women's squad. And if you're listening to this on the day that we release it, on Wednesday, then tonight England are playing against Wales in a World Cup warm-up. That's their last match before the World Cup starts itself. The 6 Saracens players named in the 23 for that match, with a few more not in that side. And it's the last time to impress coach Simon Middleton before the squad gets trimmed down to 32 players on Tuesday the 20th of September, ready for that World Cup. So we're very hopeful that the 9 or 10 Saracens women's players who've been named in the wider squad all get named in that World Cup squad. So fingers crossed for them. So we'll take a quick break now, but then we'll be back with a review of the Premiership games from the weekend.
Hi guys, I'm Alex Linton and I'm a proud Looseheads ambassador.
I'm Sydney Gregson and I'm a Looseheads ambassador.
We're a rugby mental health charity working to tackle the stigma. You can find us at Looseheads on all social media channels or at looseheads.co.uk.
The Looseheads mission is to place a mental health lead at every rugby club. Get in touch now to find out more. Take care and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Enjoy the rest of the pod.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to our final part of this week's Fezcast with myself, Jez, Matt and Barry, and time to have a quick look back at what's happened on the weekend in the Premiership Rugby, and then we'll have a look forward to the Quins game next week. But did anybody watch any games? I watched Chiefs versus Tigers, and I watched Gloucester versus Wasps, and two really weird games. I'll start quickly with Exeter and Leicester, and I'll say, as your opening game on TV of the season, God, it was not an advert for great rugby in my view. It was box kick after box kick after box kick, and then Exeter reverting to type and just route one Baxter ball. And quite frankly, I was bored silly, and I did think, actually, I mentioned to Barry before we started recording and watched it, and I think Leicester did what we did against Leicester in the final last year to Chiefs, and actually got back into the game, or had a stranglehold in the game, and then just did something daft. And they had their moments, and it was rugby by numbers, and I think that's less understandable from Tigers than it is from Chiefs. Chiefs had a really bad season last year, and they've done a reset. They've spent 5 or 6 years where they were at the top. Last year, they really didn't perform, and I think credit to their organisation that they've appreciated that. And what they've done is a bit like what Saracens did in 2010 when Brendan Ventnor came in, or 2009, as you say, the night of the long knives, and just said, right, let's go back to basics, let's build again. And that's what Exeter do. That's their DNA almost. So they've gone back and they squeaked out a win in a way that Exeter Chiefs often do. I did feel Hugo Monnier and was it Lawrence Delalio on commentary were saying about how wonderful Exeter were, and I'm sort of thinking they were watching different games to me, but that's just life, I suppose. But yeah, Tigers, you would hope after winning a championship, they would then step up and perhaps say, okay, we've got there. Now, how do we keep ahead of the game? And I don't think they did. I don't see any development further from them, which would be a concern. But, it's the first game of the season. Perhaps they will get a bit more expansive, a bit more confident in their abilities, and maybe a bit more, bit more entertaining, shall we say. But I do think, whilst you've got two scrum halves with a combined age of 712 who are very much set in their ways, you're not going to really change too much.
No, I mean, Leicester play their brand of rugby, and they did it with great success last year, and I'm sure they'll keep doing it again this year. But yes, when Richard Wigglesworth is your starting number 9, you're kind of thinking, well, you know exactly what you're going to get, and you're not really going to be able to play any other way.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the other games, lots of points being scored. So I don't know whether defence coaches have had a summer off, but was it 60 points London Irish against Worcester, and Irish are looking very good. I think they're going to be the Bolters for top 4 this year. I'll say that now. They'll be there or thereabouts. Newcastle, Quins, another game perhaps Newcastle threw away. I don't know. Quins came back into it at the end. Great try from former Saracens Nathan Earl going the whole length of the pitch. I saw that. And then, Bristol Bath, another 60 points there. And Ellis Genge going baby rhino a couple of times and whatever. And then obviously today we've seen Gloucester Wasps. I watched the Gloucester Wasps. Oh, there you go. Game of 2 halves that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. In all the games that I've seen bits and pieces of over the weekend, there's been some fairly loose play and some, as you say, defensive coaches seem to have defence has fallen out of fashion this season so far. I mean, you had Radwan picking the ball up for Newcastle and scooting 60 odd metres from when it popped out of a ruck, and the Earl try, that was an interception as well, if I remember correctly, wasn't it? It was, Quins were pressing and Earl intercepted it and headed off. And I mean, when we had in today's game, we had Reece Samet running virtually the length of the pitch to frantically chased by Ali Crossdale, of course, formerly of this parish, and he very nearly caught him. Actually, it was an impressive speed from Ali. Yeah. But there does seem to have been some open play and as you say, lots of points. But you tend to get that at the beginning of the season. Pitches are firmer, the weather's nicer, it's not quite so cold. And I mean, even the Rec probably looks quite nice at this time of year.
He's had tennis played on here. And of course, the other result, Sale 29, Northampton 22. So plenty of losing bonus points as well throughout the league this weekend. So see what everybody makes of it on the highlights and everything with flats and whatever. But obviously leads us in though to next week. Quins go away to Newcastle. A bit, as we've already discussed, a bit of a curate's egg of a performance from them. Looked impressive in certain areas and then looks susceptible in other areas. I just think, have they got their ring rustiness out of them? They've obviously got some really good attacking players. What are we looking at next week? Going to Quins is never an easy game. Going to Quins after last season where we put the hoodoo on them, there's going to be a lot of motivation over it in Twickenham from them guys. I'm a little bit concerned that if we're going in there cold, as we are, this could be a hard day at the office.
Yeah, I think we're definitely start as second favourites. I think next week we need to sort of play our way into it gradually. I think if we can and try and catch up with them in a way that they are 2 weeks ahead of us. I mean, that they played 2 pre-season games. They thumped London Scottish and lost narrowly to Leinster. And then they've had the advantage of playing Newcastle as well this week. And we've only really had I think what's described by most people who saw it as a fairly, a slightly in and out performance against Ampthill. And that's the only game we've been able to play. It'll be interesting to see who we pick to play 10. I think this season, Manu really needs to nail down that backup spot, if you like, to Owen. And it'll be interesting to see if they go with him or whether they revert to possibly Goody at 10, as they did several times last season. It will be interesting. I really hope that Manu does manage to nail that spot down and really pushes forward now. It was a shame that Thursday was cancelled because he was due to start and I was looking forward to seeing his performance. But yeah, we are definitely a minimum of 2 weeks behind Quins. They will, as you say, they always like to play us anyway. They will definitely be up for it next Saturday. The game's already sold out, I believe. So it'll be in front of a full house. And we will start as second favourites, and we are going to need to be very, very careful that we don't get blown away too early in the beginning of that game and find ourselves in a hole.
Well, absolutely. And for all that I criticise Chiefs and Tigers for going back to basics and boring us all out, Matt, if we go into that game and bore them to death in certainly the first half, we ain't going to complain, are we?
No, I think we've got to be a little bit realistic about that one. I think the best way we're going to beat Quins, certainly with the way that Quins played against Newcastle and played a lot of last season, we win that game by not letting them play their game, not by playing our open, expansive game that we, believe it or not, we did actually play last season, although most people will tell you that we're boring. But yeah, I think it's got to be a bit ugly, really. I think it's just got to be stifling Quins and putting them under pressure. And I think that's absolutely fair enough. I think in the pack, we've got the depth and talent to do that. Certainly that back row, even without the players that we've got, you could pick 4 or 5 different players in that back row, and it looks a very, very good option to really cause a lot of disruption to Quins. And I'm with Barry as well. It'd be interesting to see who plays 10. And I definitely agree. It's kind of a make or break season for Manu Vunipola, possibly. I mean, he is out of contract at the end of this season, but he is only 22, I think. So he's still got plenty of time to learn the game. But he is playing for his contract, and it'd be interesting to see whether he gets the nod against Quins. I think he definitely would have done had we played the Northampton game. I wonder whether the tactics change a little bit for this week because he's not had that pre-season. But yeah, if we play ugly and win, I've really not got any issue with that, because I think from what you kind of touched on it earlier, there's a lot of losing bonus points out there this weekend, and I think you look at the teams that were put out over the weekend. It's very, very difficult to call who beats who. So keep it ugly. Don't care.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw, though, at the back of that, keeping it ugly, 2 big issues that I think that we as a club need to address. Number one is the line out. It needs some work on it. Without Jamie thrown into the line out, I look and I worry. And I'm not entirely certain whether we've got, with the likes of Marrow out and Nick Ezekwe not there, where we've actually got the dominant line out jumpers. No Tim Swinson either. So, there's going to be an awful lot of pressure put on a couple of young lads, Callum Hunter-Hill, Hugh Tizard. They're going to have to really step up early part of the season. So that's one concern. And the second concern is the thing I've noticed in the games that have been played so far is the refereeing and the discipline around a number of areas, particularly at ruck time. We saw it today. I think there was one point with Wasps that they gave away 8 penalties on the trot against Gloucester. 2 players in the sin bin very soon after each other. And referees were really tight on, 1, what was happening at situations, and then 2, what was happening after situations had occurred and people talking and disagreeing or whatever. And that's something over the last couple of years or so that we have been on the Fezcast pretty critical of Saracens as a team about. And really, we need to be on top of that, don't we, before this, going straight into that Quins game.
And we saw both issues in the Ampthill game as well. So I definitely agree with you. The line out needs a bit of work. Well, I think Hugh Tizard will have another week or so in training, learning the calls, learning the routines. So hopefully a little bit stronger in that regard. And yeah, the discipline side of things, we've just got to learn. It's as simple as that. You can't really say anything else.
Absolutely not. And I mean, Barry, where do you? I mean, we've discussed this to death. I mean, where do you sit on the whole discipline thing with Saracens? And
it's not just the Saracens, my local club. It annoys the bejesus out of me when you get penalties reversed and a march back 10 meters, because it's so avoidable. No referee is ever going to say, "Oh, do you know what? You're right. I'll change my decision." Just shut up and walk away. Go and mutter to yourself or do whatever you want under your breath. But, it is completely pointless appealing for this, that and the other and shouting and jumping up and down at referees. It just drives you. And it's self-inflicted, isn't it? It really is. It's a self-inflicted penalty that, you don't need to give away. It's not fine, but it's understandable if you give away a penalty under pressure, or you make the wrong decision as a ruck or whatever. But yeah, in terms of arguing, that is just, there is absolutely no need, no benefit to it. It's only ever going to result in a bad outcome. And yeah, we need to stamp it out. I didn't really notice it too much today, although as you were right, Wasps were penalised all over the place. The one thing that really annoys me about rucks is they still don't seem to worry too much about side entry. That used to be a big thing, and you never see it called now.
Side entry and going beyond the ruck.
Yeah,
and off your feet. Yeah, you're right, Barry. That's annoying me. The Wasp one was weird. I mean, it was a case of a little bit of brains, because it was a line out and a penalty, yellow card to Jack Willis, and then it was the prop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Again, you just they're going to score a try. Let them score a try. Use a bit of intelligence. Them score. But there we go, gentlemen. Look, thank you ever so much for your time on this episode for the Fezcast. I think we've done this one justice tonight. We've discussed an awful lot of stuff. Obviously, no big, huge superstar interviews this week, and I'm not sure whether we've got anything lined up for next week. But next week will be definitely, hopefully, talking about a fine win down at the Stoop. But that's fingers crossed. Lucky rabbits' feet being rubbed and everything. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening in to episode 3. I hope you enjoyed it. As ever, please do get in touch with us. Let us know what you think. Drop us your thoughts and your feedback. We listen to it all, good and bad, and work upon it. So, but until next time, all the best. Ta-ra from me, and ta-ra from Matt and Barry.
Ta-ra.
Cheers up.
This is the Fezcast.